It's late. The world is quiet. Let's begin the late-night tale. The Sea of 1,000 Sighs was a vast ochre expanse where the sun was a merciless bronze gong and the wind a constant, whispering thief. For generations, the Guo family had traversed these dunes, their knowledge of hidden oases and shifting paths etched into their souls as deeply as the lineage marks on their arms. Their current guide was young Altan, whose eyes, the color of sun-bleached amber, could read the language of the dunes better than any elder. It was Altan who first noticed the wrongness. The air, usually dry as bone, carried a faint, metallic tang. The sand grains, when he let them slip through his fingers, were no longer pale gold, but were tinged with a faint, rusty crimson. His grandmother's stories whispered in his memory. When the sand bleeds, the shifting sand duke is near. He does not ride the wind, he is the wind, and his hunger is eternal. The rest of the caravan, 16 camels and 30 souls, noticed nothing amiss. They saw only the promise of the next well, of the distant, jagged peaks of the Dragon's Tail Mountains that marked the end of this crossing. Altan tried to voice his concern, but his uncle, the caravan master, chuckled. "You listen to too many old tales, nephew. It is just dust from the red stone cliffs, nothing more." But the crimson granules grew in number. By the third day, the horizon began to shimmer, not with heat, but with a coppery, unnatural haze. The wind, once a whisper, now carried a low, thrumming note, like a giant plucking a single, dissonant string on a colossal instrument. The camels became agitated, their eyes rolling white, pulling at their leads. That evening, as the sun bled into the dunes, the storm arrived. It did not come as a wall of cloud, but as a waking entity. The sand coalesced into a colossal, vaguely humanoid form that towered over them, its head scraping the bruised sky. Its body was a swirling vortex of rust-red sand, and where a face should be, two whirlpools of absolute blackness stared down, devoid of mercy or malice, only a profound, ancient hunger. This was no mere weather. This was the shifting sand duke. The caravan devolved into panic. Tents tore from their stakes, and camels bellowed in terror. Altan's uncle shouted orders that were stolen by the roaring spirit. The duke's form leaned over them, and a tendril of sentient sand lashed out, not at a person, but at their largest water skin. The leather burst, and every precious drop was absorbed instantly into the spirit's body, which seemed to grow denser, more solid. "It doesn't want our lives," Altan yelled over the gale, a desperate insight striking him. "It's thirsty, it feeds on water itself." But how does one fight a being made of the desert itself? Arrows were useless, swords meaningless. As he scrambled to salvage what he could, his hand brushed against something hard and cool, half buried in the bleeding sand. It was a small, intricately carved disc of aged bronze, no larger than his palm. It depicted a tiger coiled in slumber, and etched around its edge was a single phrase in the old script, "The stillness before the dawn." As his fingers closed around it, the world did not grow quieter, but the frantic, screaming note of the storm spirit seemed to pull back, just a little, as if repelled by the disc's presence. The shifting sand duke's form rippled, its hollow gaze seeming to fixate for a fleeting second on the object in Altan's hand, before the storm's fury redoubled, forcing him to shield his face. When the storm finally relented, the silence it left behind was deafening. The duke was gone, leaving a landscape remade. Their water was almost entirely gone, their food supplies scattered, and the familiar stars were obscured by a lingering veil of high-altitude red dust. They were lost, dehydrated, and being hunted. But as Altan clutched the bronze disc, he felt not despair, but a spark of cold, clear understanding. The spirit was intelligent, it was a predator, and they were its prey. And in his hand, he held not a weapon, but perhaps a set of rules. A way to play the game, He looked at his terrified, weary family, then at the treacherous, beautiful desert. The Duke had outmatched their strength. Now Altan would have to outthink it. The Guo caravan was a ghost of its former self. 7 water skins had been reduced to 1, half full. The spirit's attack had not been random. It had been a targeted raid, a predator culling the strength of its prey. The crimson dust coated everything, a constant reminder of their hunter. Altan's uncle, his authority shattered by the supernatural assault, could only mutter prayers to forgotten gods. It was Altan now who led, his quiet certainty a new compass for the lost. He held the bronze disc, the tiger's slumber, constantly. He noticed its subtle effects. When he held it, the ever-present thirsty note of the wind seemed to diminish, creating a small bubble of auditory calm around him. The spirit was drawn to movement and sound, yes, but also to desperation. The disc, he realized, masked that psychic scent. His grandmother's stories spoke of a place, the Singing Rocks, where a wise one who understood the old ways dwelled. "Find the stones that hum when the wind blows from the east," she had said. "There, you will find answers that the dunes themselves have forgotten." For 2 sun-scorched days, Altan led them on a desperate trek, navigating by the faint eastern breeze and the cryptic pull of the bronze disc. Just as hope began to wither, they found it, a narrow canyon where the wind, funneled through strange perforated stone pillars, produced an eerie melodic hum. At the canyon's heart stood a simple dwelling carved into the rock, and outside it, an ancient woman sat weaving a basket from hardy desert grass. She did not look up as they approached. "You carry the scent of the Duke and the silence of the tiger," she said, her voice as dry and rasping as the shifting sands. "I am Lin. You are fortunate the disc led you to me and not him." Altan knelt, placing the bronze disc before her. "Honored one, we need to understand our enemy. How do we fight a spirit that is the desert?" Lin picked up the disc, her gnarled fingers tracing the coiled tiger. "You do not fight the shifting Sand Duke. He is a force of nature, a primordial thirst given form. To fight him is to fight the sea. You must outmaneuver him." She pointed to the disc. "This is a talisman of stillness. It does not harm, it hides. It masks the sound of your heart, the whisper of your water, the panic in your soul. He hunts by sensing the essence of life itself." "This makes you less interesting." She explained that the Duke was not purely malevolent, but a reflection of the desert's balance. In ages past, shamans used such talismans to negotiate safe passage, offering a tribute of water to sate his thirst temporarily. But the knowledge and the rituals had been lost. "The Duke is bound by ancient rules, the logic of the desert," Lin continued. "He cannot create water, only consume it. He is drawn to large sources, but he is also prideful. He enjoys the hunt. He will toy with you, letting you think you have a chance, before he takes everything." As if summoned by her words, a sudden gust of wind howled through the canyon, this one carrying the distinct metallic tang of the Duke. In the distance, at the canyon's entrance, the sand began to swirl, rising into a familiar, terrifying form. He had found them again. "He is testing the talisman's strength," Lin said, her eyes narrowing. "He knows you have it. He wants to see if you know how to use it." Altan stood, clutching the disc. The spirit did not advance, but stood as a sentinel at the gate of their sanctuary, a swirling monument to their impending doom. The simple hiding power of the disc would not be enough forever. The Duke was learning, adapting. Altan looked from the ancient hermit to the terrified faces of his family, and then to the single remaining water skin. An idea, audacious and terrifying, began to form in his mind. It was not a plan of confrontation, but of misdirection. The Duke was a predator of instinct and ancient rules. To outwit him, Altan would have to speak to him in a language he understood. The language of the hunt. "He's prideful, you say?" Altan murmured, his eyes fixed on the swirling sentinel. Then we shall offer him a hunt worthy of his legend, but it will be for a prize of our choosing. The shifting sand duke remained at the canyon's mouth, a patient, swirling vortex of crimson dust. Its presence was a constant pressure, an hourglass of sand steadily draining their courage. Altan stood with Lin, the bronze disc cool in his palm, his mind racing over the hermit's words. Prideful, bound by rules.
A hunter. He enjoys the chase, Altan said, his voice low.
So we must give him that. But we will set the terms. He outlined his plan to Lin and his weary family. It was a gambit that relied entirely on the Duke's nature. They would not run, they would not hide. They would present him with a choice, a test of his predatory pride. The following morning, as the sun rose, Altan walked alone to the midpoint of the canyon. He carried their last, half-full water skin and the talisman of stillness. He could feel the Duke's attention focus on him, the wind stilling as if in anticipation. With deliberate slowness, Altan poured a single, precious mouthful of water into a small clay cup. Then he placed the cup on a flat rock and retreated 10 paces. He held the bronze disc high. "Great Spirit!" he called out, his voice echoing against the humming rocks.
You are the master of this sea of sand.
"We are but fleeting visitors. We acknowledge your power." The Duke's form rippled, the twin voids of its eyes fixed on the small cup. The scent of water, so concentrated and offered so brazenly, was an irresistible lure. A tendril of sand snaked out, swift as a viper, to claim the offering.
Wait! Altan commanded, his voice sharp, amplified by the canyon's acoustics.
The tendril froze mere inches from the cup. The spirit's form seemed to coil in confusion. Prey did not command a predator.
You are a hunter of legend, Altan continued, his heart hammering against his ribs.
Only common dust devil could steal this water.
But you are the shifting sand dune.
Surely such a trivial theft is beneath your station. He paused, letting the words hang in the metallic air. I propose a contest, a test of wits, not of strength. A game worthy of your legend. If you win, you take all our water, and our lives are forfeit to the sands. But if I win, you grant us safe passage to the Dragon's Tail Mountains. You let us go. A profound silence fell. The very desert seemed to hold its breath. The Duke was a force of instinct, but Altan was appealing to a deeper, more sophisticated aspect of its being, its ego. To refuse would be to admit it was a mere consuming beast, not a sovereign spirit. To accept was to play by a mortal's rules. The tendril of sand retracted. The colossal form shifted, and the wind produced a new sound, a low, grinding rumble that was neither a roar nor a whisper, but something akin to contemplative, amused interest. It was a sound of agreement. Altan's plan was set in motion, he explained again. He would hide the single cup of water somewhere within the canyon. The Duke would have until the sun touched the highest western peak to find it. His spirit could use all its senses, but it could not destroy the canyon or directly harm any of the people. It was a game of pure concealment. The Duke's form dissolved into 1,000,000 particles, flooding the canyon not as a monster, but as a fine, searching mist. Altan, holding the talisman of stillness close, felt the spirit's consciousness brush over him, a sensation of immense, ancient curiosity and a burning, obsessive thirst. He walked to the hermit's dwelling, the cup in his hand. Lin watched him, her expression unreadable. He did not bury it. He did not place it high on a cliff. Instead, he walked to the source of the canyon's melody, the largest of the singing rocks. At its base was a narrow fissure, just wide enough for the cup. He slid it inside into the deep, resonant darkness. He returned to his starting point. The crimson mist swirled and probed for hours, scouring every crevice, every shadow. It flowed over the cup's hiding place again and again, but the constant, powerful hum of the wind through the rock, amplified by the talisman's field of stillness, created a perceptual blind spot. The water's essence was masked by the canyon's own eternal song. As the sun finally kissed the western peak, the crimson mist coalesced back into the Duke's humanoid form. It stood motionless, its void-like gaze fixed on Altan. There was no anger, only a profound, unsettling stillness. It had lost. Altan walked to the singing rock and retrieved the untouched cup. He held it aloft. "You have lost the game, Great Spirit."
Honor your word. Grant us passage.
The shifting Sand Duke did not move. Then slowly it inclined its head, a gesture of acknowledgement, not of defeat. The spirit began to dissipate, its form scattering to the winds. For the first time in days, the air lost its metallic taste. A path through the dunes ahead seemed to clear, illuminated by the last rays of the sun. The caravan erupted in relieved cheers, but Altan did not cheer. He watched the last of the crimson granules settle. He had won the game, but he had also taught the spirit something new, the taste of frustration, and he knew with a cold certainty that the shifting Sand Duke was not an enemy that would tolerate being outwitted twice. The path through the dunes remained clear, a ribbon of hard-packed sand under the stark light of the moon. The Guo caravan moved with a haste born of fragile hope, their eyes darting to the horizons, expecting the crimson haze to return at any moment. Altan walked at the head, the bronze disc a heavy weight against his chest. The silence was too perfect, the compliance too absolute. The shifting Sand Duke was a force of ancient pride. Such a being did not accept defeat lightly. It was biding its time. They made camp in the lee of a massive, wind-sculpted rock. No one slept deeply. In the dead of night, the air grew cold, and the metallic tang returned, subtle as a poison. Altan awoke, his hand instinctively closing around the talisman. He saw it not as a storm, but as a shimmer in the air, a condensation of thirst gathering at the edge of their camp, coalescing into the familiar form. The Duke had returned, but he had not come for the water. The spirit stood, its form less turbulent, more focused. The hollow eyes regarded Altan, and this time the wind did not roar. It formed words, a dry, rasping whisper that scraped against the mind.
You played the game. You understood the rules.
No mortal has done this in 1,000 turnings of the sand. Altan rose, facing the entity without aggression. You honored your word. The path remains open. The game is over. The wager is concluded, the Duke whispered. But the desert is eternal. You will die, your water will fade. I can wait. The promise in those words was more terrifying than any immediate attack. It was a death sentence on a geological scale. A cold dread settled in Altan's stomach. He had outwitted the Duke, but he had not solved the fundamental problem. The spirit was a part of the desert's equilibrium, a natural check. To simply escape was to leave a festering wound in the balance of this place, and to guarantee the Duke's vengeful attention on any who followed. Waiting is the action of the stone and the dune, Altan replied, his voice steady though his heart raced. We are the river, fleeting and purposeful. To only wait is to admit you cannot change the game. He was appealing to its pride once more, but this time he was offering a partnership, not issuing a challenge. He held up the bronze talisman of stillness.
This hides life from you.
But what if it could also call to you? What if my people and those who come after did not hide, but acknowledged you? Not as a monster to be feared, but as a sovereign to be respected. The Duke's form shifted, the sand whispering in clear interest. Speak, a pact, Altan said. We will not hide from you in this part of the desert. Instead, when we pass through, we will leave an offering. A tribute of water willingly given placed upon a stone at the crossroads of the winds. Not a single sip in a game, but a gift to the master of this land. In return, you grant our caravan safe passage. You let the river flow, and in doing so you are assured a perpetual drink, not a single feast, followed by famine. The silence that followed was immense. The Duke was considering. The idea of voluntary tribute, of a structured, ongoing relationship, was alien to its nature as a solitary predator. Yet the logic was inescapable. One caravan's water was a fleeting meal. The The generations-long pact was a permanent oasis. A talisman, the Duke whispered. It will be the sign? Yes, Altan said. Any caravan bearing this symbol, or its likeness, comes in peace, bearing your tribute. They are under your protection, not your hunt. The shifting Sand Duke slowly extended a hand of swirling granules. The pact is made. Nomad, who thinks like the dew. The offering stone will be my shrine. Those with the sign of the still tiger will be as the wind, felt but untouched. The spirit's form dissolved not into a storm, but into a gentle, rust-colored mist that settled peacefully upon the dunes. The oppressive presence lifted, replaced by a sense of ancient, watchful accord. Weeks later, the Guo caravan reached the green foothills of the Dragon's Tail. They were weary, but alive, their story already hardening into legend. Altan looked back at the vast golden sea behind them. He was no longer just a guide who read dunes. He was the architect of a peace, the weaver of a new rule into the fabric of the desert. He touched the bronze disc at his chest. It was no longer a tool for hiding, but a seal of a promise. The shifting Sand Duke was still out there, an eternal thirst in an eternal land, but now he was also a guardian of the very rivers he once preyed upon. The Nomad had not slain the spirit. He had outwitted it so completely that he had made it an ally.